Hello, hello, hello. Welcome into the Fantasy Live Show. We are recapping everything that we saw from the NFL draft this season, and we're looking into the coming season right now. We're excited. We are reacting to all things day 3 as well. And like you know, I can never do this alone. Kendall Valenzuela here. We've got Dwain McFarland. We've got Ian Hartitz. A happy early birthday to Ian Hartitz, by the way. So if anyone's listening and it's Sunday, make sure you send him a happy birthday. I hope all your birthday wishes came true, though, with the Cowboys here. Ian, how you doing?
Oh my gosh, if we could just somehow get Jaden Blue, all my wishes in this world, would just be fulfilled. So it's a great day to be great, but no, I appreciate that. Great to be back with you guys 3 days in a row.
Amazing. Dwain, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing good. Draft day. We are working on rookie supermodel updating. I have to give a shout out to Joe Metz in the background. Like I'm literally pinging him like every 2 or 3 minutes, like updated. And he actually is the one that has to go update the site. I'm sure he's really sick of me by now. So I think probably after this round, I'll give it a rest and then I'll just do all the updates tomorrow morning so Joe can go touch some grass.
There we go. I think we all need to go touch some grass after this is done, but we're excited to have everyone here with us again, reacting to all things, not only from today, but we're going through fantasy winners and losers, not just the rookies, but we are going to be talking about some veterans here in a minute. And just want to remind you all, fantasylife.com, the projections that we talk about with Dwain McFarland, all of our reactions are going to be at fantasylife.com. Our article's 100% free, but if you've been thinking about getting that Fantasy Life Plus subscription, now is the time to do so. We've got an early bird special, code EARLY25, EARLY 25, gets you 25% off any Fantasy Life Plus package for the next year. This deal ends on April 27th. So make sure if you're looking around, if you're thinking about doing it, get it now. Early 25 is that code. So let's get into it, guys. Before we get into winners and losers, we did have some picks today that do impact us for fantasy football. So Dwain, let's start with Bashaw Tuton, King Tuton, as Thor Nystrom liked to call him during the offseason process. But he was somewhat 4.3, 240, matched the time of Achane. So obviously his name has been thrown around, and it was a really good pre-draft process for him. So now Bashaw Tuton lands with the Jacksonville Jaguars. How do you like this landing spot for him?
Yeah, look, I mean, Tuton actually gets better draft capital than what we expected. Going in early round 4 was expected to be more of a mid to late round 4 pick. So that obviously helps him in the supermodel. He comes out at a 71 overall, Kendall. I think he's a good fit for the Jaguars. Like they still got Travis Etienne. They've still got Tank Bigsby as well. So it's not like it's going to be a situation where I think he comes in and immediately takes over, but I think he can challenge for opportunities right away. And if you look at like really the kind of path like that Jacksonville's taken, like they're really focusing on getting these playmakers, Kendall, and Tuton definitely was one of those in college. If you look at him, 18% of his carries went for 10 plus yards or more. The average NFL prospect since 2017 has had that number at 14%. So he's well above that. Also missed tackles forced per attempt, 36%, Kendall. That's in the 90th percentile. Yards after contact, 4.2. That's in the 61st percentile. So this is a guy that can bring it. You have heard people talk about he needs to be more in a like a power blocking run scheme or an angle blocking run scheme versus zone. Some people have worries about his vision. I think Thor even called that out a little bit, but definitely has the speed score rating of 93 in the supermodels. Actual speed score is 118.3, which is 85th percentile since 2017. So big time playmaker. I do think it's a backfield that is wide open for him to come in and challenge for touches. Again, not saying he's going to take it over right away, but like, would we be surprised if we looked up and by like week 6 or 7, it's suddenly Tuton that's getting 55% of the carries? I think it's totally in play. And like, if you just look at the hit rates for these players like him, Kendall, 68% of them went on to be top 36 running backs within their first 3 years. So he's in a good range. He's the running back 6 in the supermodel this year. And there is a chance he's a top 24 guy. 42% of players with his profile within their first 3 seasons went on to be top 24 running backs. So I think there's a lot to like with Bashaw Tuton here.
Yeah, I mean, he checked some nice boxes. We all would have much preferred 3 days ago if he got drafted on day 2. Instead, I guess the Jaguars is a reasonable depth chart. But Tank Bigsby, you talked about all those great, numbers for Tuton at Virginia Tech. That's awesome. Bigsby just had those pretty much same amazing numbers at the NFL level, which is pretty cool. Travis Etienne, only 1 year removed from back-to-back 1,400-yard seasons. I mean, if we just had to, again, take a stand and say, is Tuton going to be someone who's going to take over the backfield or be number 3 on the depth chart all season long? I think there's pretty decent odds, going both ways. So the fact, again, he could rise up it, all right, that's fine. But, man, we can actually got some graphics for you guys just showing how bad some of the hit rates are, okay, for these day 3 running backs. I'm not trying to be a party pooper here, guys, but as much as rookie running backs have, had some good years, actually 29 different rookie RBs have turned in top 24 numbers over the past decade. I mean, we're talking about only 24% of them actually emerging in rounds 4 or later or in the UDFA range. So specifically, that means, guys, 7, okay? Not this year's Bucky Irving. It's more like, every couple years Bucky Irving. Only 7 rookie running backs with day 3 or undrafted draft capital have turned in top 24 numbers. So again, it's fine, but Dwain, again, the fact that he, I guess, was coming in expected to be this late round 4 pick. Okay, but I know a lot of people out there were just begging for day 2 draft capital, and then he goes early round 4, and everyone's still excited, man. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the beauty of the supermodel. Like it takes what that chart that you have there and it goes way beyond. It looks at all the other factors, their production, looks at their film rating, and we've got these hit rates over time for the prospect's profile versus just looking at draft capital. We know draft capital alone is the number one driver, and I think the numbers that you're showing, like if somebody just had to like top of their head be like, okay, I don't know anything about rookies and I'm going into my draft. Like, how should you do it? Yeah, just use NFL draft capital. But we've actually crafted something that goes much beyond that. So I think when you look at a player like this and you see that, 68% of the time they've had a top 36 finish in their first 3 years, that just speaks really well for Tuton. And I think that this backfield's pretty wide open. I'm with you. I'm not saying he's going to take it over, but I think we're kind of losing the plot. Like, this is the kind of running back. If you're in a league that's drafting 16 to 20 rounds, this is the type of player I want to be drafting late. This is the kind of guy I want to be stashing on my bench, because if he does get in the lineup, he's shown an ability to play on pass downs. He's shown that explosive playmaking ability, and we know what can happen. We've seen that happen with Achane. He wasn't a high pick either. So there's certain profiles that I definitely want to gravitate to. To Ian's point, we're never saying we're guaranteeing that it's going to happen, but he is the kind of player that if you do see it happen, like, it's going to be worth having on your roster in fantasy football. So are you drafting Bashaw Tuton as your running back 3? No. But are you stashing him on your roster as your running back 5 or 6? Yeah, he's an absolute priority for that type of pick.
And Ian, when you look at this backfield with Travis Etienne, I mean, he burned a lot of people last season. You thought that maybe he could replicate what he did for 2023, and then he finished as an RB36, averaging 7.4 fantasy points per game. Is he someone that could be squeezed out in this situation where you say, I don't want to draft Travis Etienne. I don't like the outlook. I'm going to wait now, and I'm going to go get a Tank Bigsby, a Bashaw Tuton if I want anyone in this backfield?
I'm old enough to remember Travis Etienne being one of the more explosive running backs that we actually saw coming out of Clemson. That's unfortunate that we had the Liz Frank injury rob him of his rookie year. But 2 years afterwards, he was putting up some big numbers, and we kind of get lost in the sauce sometimes with these running backs when they're playing through early season injuries. And unfortunately, that was the case for Etienne basically all of last season. Had the shoulder issue impacting him as early as September, and then was playing through a hamstring, pull after week 6. So again, it's one of those things I think we pay attention to while it's going on, but afterwards, not so much. So look, everything Dwain's saying is fine, but I guess my point is, like, we're probably going to have Tuton ranked as like the RB50, the RB51 ahead of 2025. So I just want to, kind of stop myself from getting too excited about a guy that more likely than not is going to be completely irrelevant in fantasy.
May I interest you in someone that could make you a little bit more excited for fantasy in one Cam Scataboo here, Ian, going to the New York Giants. This is one where, again, forks up. If anyone sees my tweets, it's because I'm an ASU fan. It's just, we just have to have someone that I can root for that's not N'Keal Harry. That was the last guy I could root for. So I just need some help here, guys. But Dwain, what do you like here with Cam Scataboo? Feels like maybe when he joins this backfield with Tyrone Tracy, are you looking at it as a hot hand situation? Or do you actually think that Cam Scataboo could make waves in fantasy for 2025?
I mean, Tyrone Tracy was really good last year, especially for being a guy that just came in as someone that played more receiver. You look at the way he ran, looked at his feel for the game. Like, I think he was pretty impressive, but he doesn't have high draft capital tied to him. So that does leave it open for a committee approach. We also still have Devin Singletary sitting in there, Kendall. So it's going to be a battle, but I do like the profile of Scataboo because he does give you that pass catching ability. If you look in the history of the rookie supermodel, he's got the 7th highest production rating overall at 86 and the 8th best receiving profile on record since 2017. So again, similar to what we talked about Tuton, not quite as explosive, but a guy that can play in both aspects of the game. game, and he's actually a better receiving prospect than what we saw from Tuton. So that means if he gets his opportunity to be on the field, he may not give it back. And even if it's for a 4 or 5 game stretch because there's an injury or something, this is a player that we know can come in and catch passes and handle 17 to 18 rushing attempts in a game. You have to remember this is a deeper class, so some of these guys going in early round 4, like the model's already dinging them for that. But because their profiles are strong enough to overcome it, this is a guy that 64% of the time his comps went on to be a top 36 running back within their first 3 seasons. That's still really a really good mark. 39% of them went on to be top 24. Going to be more of one of these guys that we're going to stash, Kendall. Like when I worked on projections earlier today, I didn't suddenly just project Scataboo for like this huge role. It's 25, 30%. And again, I don't think the point is that we have to come in and say that, oh, where are we going to rank this guy? Running back 50 or 51. The point is like, are these players that are in a situation where we could see the depth chart go their way? I think the answer is yes to both players we've talked about so far. Is it a guarantee? No, but the door's open. And are these players that if their opportunity presented itself, could they actually help you win a fantasy league? And yes, these are the types of players that can do that. So Scataboo will be another guy that I want to target, Kendall. I know you've already put it out there as you are going to be the fan leader of the trio of us. You already tweeted it. He's going to be on all your best ball teams. So we will be looking to see your exposures at 100% for Scataboo.
Perfect.
But yeah, I really do like him, Kendall.
Get the gold jacket ready.
Here?
Hey,
whatever.
3 down roll.
I just have Ian, I just have to have something good in my life from ASU, and this seems like it could be the only one here. Do you anything on Scataboo here from you, Ian? It feels like again, he's a bowling ball. He's this guy that you're going to see use all of his strength. He's not necessarily a dynamic route runner. That's something that you can look at, and he isn't much of a pass blocker either. But someone hot hand, goal line. You could see him kind of winning here with the Giants.
He's a heck of a lot of fun to watch. I mean, again, if you just wanted to say maybe the single best games worth film last year, probably was him versus Texas. I know you were lucky enough to actually have a seat and watch that one live, dog. But man, just again, it's one of these things where, all right, Scataboo, he can catch the ball. But I mean, we just spent this time last year talking about how Tyron Tracy converted wide receiver and how great he is in the passing game. I mean, Brian Dable has been side by side Devin Singletary, for 4 years now, even dating back to his days in Buffalo. So yeah, if everything breaks right for Scataboo, absolutely, you could get that 3 down roll. We've seen far worse running backs. Zonovan Knight was a thing for a couple weeks, a couple years ago. So again, if Tracy and Singletary just completely fall out of favor, absolutely Scataboo can take off and do his thing. But guys like Tyler Algier, Blake Corum, Jaylen Wright, I mean, we can go through 50 plus running backs, so that probably is also going to be the case. So Scataboo, rooting for the guy. He's a lot of fun. I kind of question if he's going to be able to break tackles like he kind of did in college at the NFL level, but you can kind of make that complaint about plenty of guys. So, hey, again, good depth chart. But once again, we're sitting here 3 days ago going, man, let's get that round 2, round 3 draft capital for Scataboo. We didn't. So I'm not going to be overly excited about it.
Going over to your guys' Dallas Cowboys, I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say about Jaden Blue, the new running back, RB1 here, Dwain, if you want to look at it that way. If you would have told me, by the way, that we would be waiting till Saturday afternoon to talk about the new Cowboys running back, Dwain, I would have laughed and said there's no way. They have to get someone in there with Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders. But here we are, Jaden Blue. What have you seen from him? What could he bring to this team?
Yeah, I mean, according to Ian, we should throw the supermodel in the trash. Like, Jaden Blue is actually the perfect example of how this works. Now I'm going to agree with Ian. Jaden Blue, yes, he lands on a depth chart where it's wide open. We've got Javonte Williams, we've got Miles Sanders, both technically they've been washed for the last 2 seasons. Do we know if they're washed this year? No. But when you look at the hit rates on a prospect like Jaden Blue, who gets higher draft capital than we thought he was going to get, only 25% of them went to be top 36 running backs within their first 3 seasons. So this is the kind of back that I'm not going to be as excited about. I do think the opportunity is there, so you can't completely ignore him. Like, you want to use your last pick, like round 20 in a best ball draft, just given the way the depth chart looks and knowing that Jaden Blue is a really fast player, like you just want to bet on those couple of things, then yeah, I would agree. But I think for the guys that went at the top of round 4, I feel very different. And there's not that big of a difference between the top of round 4 and the end of round 3, right? Or the middle of round 3, because the way draft capital works, it really flattens out towards the end of round 2, and the supermodel's taking that into account. So I would agree with Ian's sentiment and his approach, which is like, don't care that much about Jaden Blue. Fine throwing a dart on him here or there, but not going to be a guy that I'm really attacking in fantasy leagues this season.
I will say when you kind of go through some of these running backs and you need to paint the picture for why they didn't have, bigger production. I mean, having to play behind Jonathan Brooks and Bijan Robinson at Texas is a pretty good reason for Mr. Blue. I do believe he was like the 6th ranked running back overall coming out of high school in the first place. So got to see him catch a couple of touchdowns on those wheel routes against my Ohio State Buckeyes. Unfortunately, couldn't get the W, but man, had a $140, I think, and 2 touchdowns against Clemson. I mean, he does bring, I think, a different theoretical 3-down skill set. Just please, man, learn how to hold on to that football. Way too many fumble issues for a limited amount of career touches. And obviously that's a quick way to get your, butt on the bench at the next level. But hey, that depth chart looking smooth. I mean, we just saw Rico Dowdle emerge as the guy in Dallas after being an undrafted rookie. So again, if you are looking at an organization, I think Tony Pollard's the only guy that they've actually used any remote, draft capital on at running back really since Zeke. I mean, again, if we had to say, all right, dart throw, 5th rounders, they never work out, but a couple do, maybe Jaden Blue could be that guy.
Ian, does this make Javonte Williams an actual winner from this fantasy football draft, though, or this NFL draft, talking about fantasy football drafts? Is he a winner?
Yeah, I don't know how. I mean, again, if you just would have said back on Thursday, hey, the Cowboys aren't going to draft a running back until pick 149 or whatever this was, I don't really care who the running back is. I mean, we'd have to be thrilled at that point. And, we can watch every single running back, all right? The reason why everyone's like, oh, this class is so deep, and it is a deep class. That's fine. That's cool. But watch film of any running back that gets over 1,000 total yards and 5 touchdowns. There's plenty of them out there. You're going to find what you want to find. Like, you can find good plays with these dudes. So I just struggle, again, when we have these 5th round players to be like, all right, yeah, because we can find good things to say about every single running back, and that's been true over the years. So, yeah, Javonte Williams, I think, is a winner. Should we be skyrocketing him up the ranks, top 20 back all of a sudden? No, I don't think so. But again, just relative to what we thought, which was potential round 2, round 3 draft capital being used, Javonte's on the move.
Someone that we thought was going to be QB1, maybe QB2, depending on who you asked in this class, was Shidor Sanders. And the slide finally stopped here today, going into day 3 of the NFL draft. Another thing, Dwain, where if you would have told us that even just months ago, weeks ago, hours ago, we would have been like, what is going on? So the Cleveland Browns traded up with the Seattle Seahawks here, selected Sanders with the 144th pick in the 5th round on Saturday. Cleveland, Dwain, is this the best quarterback that they have on their depth chart right now?
Well, I thought Thor put out a really good tweet about it, basically saying, look, Shidor Sanders probably is the best quarterback on the Browns roster. Like, we can't say that for sure, but Thor really did like him in his scouting process. He's just saying, but he's going to have to show up humble and ready to work. And so I think he's going to have to come in there. Obviously, he's going to have a chip on his shoulder because he wants to prove everybody wrong. But I think the way I look at this, Kendall, is who knows who's going to start the season? Probably Joe Flacco. But I think the nice thing here is we now have multiple outs for the receiving options for the Browns. We know we've added multiple guys. So it's a situation now where at least for Jerry Jeudy, at least for David Njoku, I know Harold Fannin Jr. as well, some of these other guys, maybe one of these guys. Now it's like, okay, we've got potentially 3 or 4 guys. One of them can work out. Can just one of them work out? And so I think it's a positive that they have 2 young guys to at least try to battle behind Joe Flacco. Will it ultimately work out? We don't know for sure, but I think it's better than not having 2 young guys behind Joe Flacco trying to push him. So I'm going to take it as a positive, and I do think that Shidor has a chance that by midseason he could be the starter on this team. We'll see how it ultimately works out. I think it's going to be a fascinating storyline.
Horrible situation, though. I mean, we talk about wide receiver rooms. I mean, okay, Jerry Jeudy, that was a nice year last year, 1,200 plus, a little bit Jameis aided. But man, Cedric Tillman is your number 2 wide receiver. Michael Woods or Harold Fannin is your number 3. So that offensive line not going to do Shidor any favors, and that tendency to drift back in the pocket. I mean, again, you can take your pre-draft evaluation. I know Thor had Shidor, QB1, him and Mel Kiper and everything. But the Browns literally just told us that they valued Dylan Gabriel 2 rounds ahead of Shidor Sanders. So maybe there was just this complete NFL-wide conspiracy. But I don't know, man. I think we kind of have to take it at face value. I mean, at this point, the Browns just used a round 3 pick on Dylan Gabriel and a round 5 pick on Shidor Sanders, and we're still supposed to believe that Shidor is the guy over Gabriel? Like, I don't think so.
In best ball, are you willing to take him, Ian? That feels like the only appropriate time where you can say that. Because redraft, we're not going to do it. Dynasty is a different conversation. Just straight up no?
Hard no.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't
Wayne,
draft him in best ball, but I would straight up draft Shidor Sanders over Dylan Gabriel in Dynasty. Like,
okay,
I'm with Ian. I don't know about a conspiracy theory, but like just looking at Dylan Gabriel, like undersized 5'11" quarterback that wasn't even that great in an awesome offense like Oregon, like I'll just take my chances with Sanders. Like I don't know the ultimate reason for why he fell. He was obviously overrated. A lot of people never thought that he was a round 1 pick, but to see him fall this far, like, is probably, I think it's an overreaction, by the league. So yeah. I would still be willing to put my bet on Sanders over Dylan Gabriel.
Well, he might have a chance there again, going to the Cleveland Browns. So a crowded quarterback room, but we'll see what happens with it at the end of the season here. Before we continue on going through our winners and losers from the NFL draft, let's hear from our friends over at Bud Light.
Hey, you're not actually allowed to drink in a beer commercial?
Since when?
You gotta wait till it's done.
5,
4, 3, 2, 1.
Continuing on here, we are going through our winners from the NFL draft. And again, use that promo code EARLY25, EARLY25 at fantasylife.com if you want 25% off any Fantasy Life Plus subscription for the next year. The first winner here, Ian, we're looking at DeAndre Swift for the Chicago Bears, one that we thought maybe day 1, day 2, we get into this third day and we say, all right, well, it seems like DeAndre Swift is a big winner there because they don't really add to that backfield. What are you looking at with him?
I mean, with DeAndre Swift, he's someone that the fantasy community used to absolutely adore back in his days in Detroit. He goes to Philly, actually takes over the starting job, has, north of, 1,200, 1,300 combined yards. Was he Saquon Barkley? No. Who is? Is he Jahmyr Gibbs? No. Who is? All right, we're constantly comparing this dude against arguably the 2 most talented running backs in the NFL right now. And now all of a sudden we're looking at a Chicago team that we cannot stop saying good things about in terms of the ability to add to the offensive line, to add the skill position players, to get Ben Johnson there in the scheme. And again, it seems like DeAndre Swift is the only guy that's been left behind rising up the ranks because of the assumption that the Bears were going to use early draft capital on a running back. But as it stands right now, they did not. So there has been trade murmurs. I know Kendall, Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet actually before the draft. So not saying he's totally in the clear yet, but Dwain, I cannot think of a better scenario for DeAndre Swift than the Bears not adding a running back until round 6 at the earliest at this point.
Yeah, I mean, no one ran more pure. I mean, you're talking about an offense that got multiple upgrades. We could be talking about an offense, and if Caleb takes a step forward and you've got all these weapons and now you got Ben Johnson calling plays, like we could have one of the better offenses potentially in the league. Like you can at least squint and see that happening. And if that's the case, and DeAndre Swift gets to be the lead back, right now I've got him projected for over 50% of the rushing attempts based on them not taking a running back so far in the draft. Man, that could be a very, very fruitful role, even if DeAndre Swift isn't this elite player. Like, ultimately, he's just in line right now to get the volume. I also think this keeps Roschon Johnson in play as a late round kind of handcuff pick, because behind him is just Travis Homer, Ian Wheeler, who was kind of a camp guy last year that really had some buzz around him, a fast guy. But yeah, Roschon Johnson, nice late round handcuff pick. And yeah, I do agree with Ian, DeAndre Swift. And right now, Kendall, just in the projections alone, DeAndre Swift does rank inside the top 20 running backs, if we're looking at it from a projection standpoint, which is higher than Omari and Hampton and honestly, most of the rookies we've talked about, besides Ashton Genty. I would have to look. There might be one other rookie I have ahead of him, but right now he's RB 21 in PPR, RB 19 in half PPR, just purely from a projection standpoint.
6 touchdowns, 959 rushing yards, and then the career high, 253 attempts. You don't add anyone to that backfield and you say, all right, well, let's just run it back and do it again with a bolstered offensive line and better weapons for Caleb. So it's all there. It's all there, Bears fans. You have won the offseason yet again, so we'll just see if it translates into winning in real life in the NFL. Another winner here, Ian, is Chase Brown for the Cincinnati Bengals. I remember you and Dwain going back and forth on Chase Brown being like, well, we might need to be careful depending on draft capital. Chase Brown was a 5th round pick, I believe, last season. And he had a phenomenal year in 2024, but that was Zach Moss going down. They really started that situation, a 1A, 1B situation. But now you look towards the end of this draft, I haven't seen them take a running back yet. And you can look at Chase Brown and say, well, they might just run it back, right?
I guess so at this point. I mean, it's just going to be tricky where we want to exactly fall with Brown in the ranks, because end of the season, I mean, we saw it, the incredibly sheeshy week 17 championship performance aside, when he got tackled at the 1 like 2 or 3 times, slid down at the very end of the game and hurt himself. I mean, that was brutal, but this was still a guy that legit was being ranked inside our top 5, top 6 on a weekly basis. The Problem is, the first half of the season was not that cool. We're talking about a guy that was just a PPR RB 28 in weeks 1 through 8 before Zach Moss got injured with the neck injury. So things were starting to trend a little bit towards Brown's way. I get it. But when you do look at what he did in the second half, it wasn't like this dude was all of a sudden averaging 60 yards per carry and just, emerging as one of the best talents of the position. Really did seem more volume-aided than anything. So again, volume could very well be there, but they did restructure and bring back Zach Moss. Samaje Perine could be, a bit more of a thorn in the side of his 2-minute stuff than we necessarily saw last year. Trevion Williams was a complete, no-show, non-factor in Cincinnati. So again, I'm not completely saying Chase Brown is a top 10 running back because, again, I do think Moss could be more involved as he was during the first half of last year. But hey, Dwayne, as I was kind of saying with Javonte Williams before, like if you just would have told him before the draft, hey, the Bengals are going to take nobody right now, how could we not say Brown's a big winner?
Yeah, I think Chase Brown I would still rate as slightly as a better winner than Javonte. Like they both win the same way. Their teams haven't taken a significant running back, but I do feel like the Bengals are probably a little more into Chase Brown. He is a guy that, he's homegrown. He's from their team. So I agree with you. I don't think we're going to see these 80 and 85% snap shares. I think that was greatly aided by the fact that Zach Moss did injure his neck. But to your point, Ian, and you even mentioned it, he was already taking over the backfield in week 7 and 8. He had pushed his rushing attempt share to 60% in both of those games before Zach Moss got injured. But people do have to do a little bit of a reality check. That could be the situation we're dealing with. The 60% of the carries, not 80%. So I think Ian's on the right track saying just be realistic. Like I'm not that worried about Zach Moss. He wasn't very good last year. I'm not that worried about Samaje Perine. I think the bigger thing is just does any NFL team really want to load a player up with the amount of workload that Chase Brown had at the end of the year? And I think typically the answer to that is no. We just don't see it often enough. So I think that's proof enough to us that teams know you can't just ride a guy on an 80% snap share and not think that and think that they're going to be able to hold up for the entire season. So I see a reduction in workload coming, but I think overall it's good for Chase Brown. This is really good news. They didn't add one of these guys in like round 2 or 3 of the draft, and so he is a guy that we can continue to at least hypothetically look at as having that potential to be a top 12 back. Lives in a really good offense with Joe Burrow in this high-powered offense.
229 carries, which was good for 16th among running backs last season. And like you guys said, ranked as the overall RB6 from week 8 to week 18, averaged 19.6 fantasy points per game. That's when, again, Zach Moss went down on IR with that season-ending neck injury. Looks like he should be good to go, the latest reports that I read, for week 1, but that's obviously something we'll watch out for during training camp and the offseason as well. Isaiah Pacheco here is where we're going next. Another winner where, again, Ian, I thought to myself, Cam Scataboo would look great for the Kansas City Chiefs because Isaiah Pacheco isn't making anyone, scared, right? You've got Elijah Mitchell there. You've got Kareem Hunt, who is still in our lives. And for fantasy football purposes, he might have been boring, but he was scoring you fantasy points. So what do you think of Isaiah Pacheco right now with them, again, not adding anyone significant to this backfield?
I mean, this guy was the RB14 in PPR points per game in 2023. He just broke his freaking leg in week 2 or whatever it was last season, and they had to have Kareem Hunt come in. Really never looked like, even after Pacheco returned from that injury, that he was the same guy. So I know when he runs, it's hardly the most, pretty thing. We always used to say Nick Chubb was the most pure runner in the NFL. I mean, Pacheco might be the least pure runner in the NFL, but you know what? When you're in the Chiefs offense, I don't really think it matters, and they've proven willing to feed him the ball, and he actually has a pretty nice receiving floor as well. So I was with you, Kendall. Scataboo, like any number of players. We talked about Travion Henderson at the end of round 1, potentially being a really good fit here in Kansas City, but they decided to really rest and, again, not even really touch that RB position. So with Andy Reid and these guys, I mean, we've seen them not exactly follow, again, just draft capital and, incumbent starters. I mean, there's a reason why Clyde Edwards-Helaire never became a thing there, despite having that, round 1 draft capital back in the day. So I am a little bit worried, Dwayne, that, again, we just see Kareem Hunt, who's obviously familiar. And, you need 3 yards, he'll get you 3 yards. You need 4, he'll get you 3. That type of running back for sure. But, I'm a little bit worried. But again, we're worried about every running back to some extent. And the fact that the Chiefs refrain from adding any level of competition. Pacheco's someone that, again, if we're able to get as, this RB30, RB33, I mean, we could be sitting there after week 1 going, oh, crap, we got a top 15 player the rest of the way.
There is a super easy path to that for him. Look, I mean, Kareem Hunt, like it's admirable what he did last year. He gutted it out. He got some tough yards, but like really, I mean, in the Chiefs offense, do we really want to be giving away touches to Kareem Hunt? Like, I I don't think they're going to want to do that again. Like, I'm not saying Kareem Hunt's going to not get any carries, but I think it could be 20%, right? And we could easily see Pacheco back around 60%. I think the big thing, to your point, Ian, is he was injured. And when he came back, he obviously wasn't the same player. I don't think it was because they thought Kareem Hunt was playing amazing. Now, they did add Elijah Mitchell this offseason, but that's another player that's not really been able to stay healthy. So it's hard to get too worried about that. Yeah, some explosive playmaking ability there with Elijah Mitchell. And if we suddenly found him at the top of the depth chart for a 2 or 3 game stretch, no doubt he'd probably be in our running back one ranks for those weeks, because that's just the way it works if you can follow the volume. But I think Pacheco has to be the favorite to win this job. And I don't think it's honestly, like, I haven't adjusted it yet because I've only been adjusting like the ones where the rookies landed. Now I got to go back and adjust the ones where they didn't land, where I'd kind of left room assuming that the team might draft a running back. But I mean, I had Pacheco at 45% of the carries. Like, I could easily see 55, 60%. Like, easily see that. I'll probably end up projecting it closer to 50%. So it'll be really interesting to see how does the market react to Pacheco, because I think they could be down on him for the wrong reasons. The bottom line is, like Ian said, he just got hurt. He just got unlucky with the injury, but I think he's clearly the best running back right now on the Chiefs.
Let's go over to another winner. We're just grouping the Washington Commanders running backs as a whole altogether because they, again, did not add anyone here. So you've got Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, and I'll shout out our guy, Jeremy McNichols, joined us once on SiriusXM. So we're always still rooting for the guy. But Dwain, it's really the same thing here where you thought to yourself, all right, if they added a rookie, maybe a gross, some kind of committee could have happened. But Dwain, for these Washington Commanders running backs, it didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, and it's an offense that we really like. You had Deebo Samuel, so he's probably going to get some of those touches that maybe we're going to look. McNichols is a guy that's a supermodel. I do have to say, back in the day, like McNichols. Ooh. So we are McNichols fans around here. So you had Deebo Samuel. He's probably going to get a few of the touches, Kendall, but that's another potential playmaker on the offense, assuming that maybe Deebo isn't as washed as people think. Maybe it had something to do, I don't know, with injuries and pneumonia last year, as far as why we saw such a downturn from Deebo. And then you look at just Jaden Daniels and what he did. Now we're heading into year 2 there. I like where the Washington Commanders offense is at, and I want to have pieces of it. And so the running backs are some of the cheapest ways to do that right now. So I do think it's going to be a split backfield between these two. I think we would see something similar to last year, Kendall. Expect Brian Robinson Jr. to handle more of the early down work, probably somewhere between 50 to 55% of the carries if we give away a few more percentage points to Deebo. And then you'll really have Austin Eckler handling the passing down work. I've got him projected for 20% of the rushing attempts, but getting almost 50% of the passing down work. And if you go back and look, like, Eckler was actually pretty good before he got hurt last year. I know he's an older guy, but I'll say this, like, if Brian Robinson Jr. suddenly battled an injury early in the year and Austin Eckler was 100% healthy, Kendall, like, you could see Austin Eckler, I know he's old, but he can still stay on the field all downs in an offense that we like. Like, he could give you a stretch of running back 1 games. I know people are listening to this going, oh my God, that's so gross. Guys, just realize that's how fantasy works. It's chaos. And the point being, they didn't add anybody. So it's just down to these guys. If either Austin Eckler or Brian Robinson Jr. were to miss time, the other guy gets a drastic boost in value.
And they do keep, the Jeremy McNichols of the world, as they should. Again, just awesome locker room guy, K-Dog. I'm with you on the McNichols train. But look, they're going to get them involved a little bit. Chris Rodriguez is someone you always see bumping from the practice squad back to the active roster as well. But yeah, like, Brian Robinson missed some time last year, and Eckler accordingly had 2 separate games where he had a snap rate north of 70%. And I understand 2023, he burnt a lot of you guys who used the early round pick on him in fantasy. But that was another situation where he had an early season high ankle sprain that just really seemed to zap the explosiveness out of the fantasy Hall of Famer. So Eckler last year, again, if you just want to kind of look at running backs and their ability to get yards per carry and yards per reception, one of the more efficient guys out there. I mean, he just averaged his most yards per touch since 2019, had a kick return for a touchdown that got called back. I mean, really did think Eckler looked far more like the past version of himself. And right now, where he's going in drafts, and maybe it changes, but I wouldn't expect him to be that big of a riser. I mean, Eckler is one of these guys who, again, I think really does have nice handcuff upside. Not going to be top 5 the second Robinson goes down, but could actually be threatening, top 15, maybe even top 12. So you had that nice handcuff upside, but you're also getting those 10, 12 touches per game, which, again, he's proven capable of making the most out of. So that flex with benefits sort of player, I think, fits nicely with Eckler. And then with Robinson, I mean, Dwain, we're not going to project him for 12 touchdowns, but it wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world. I mean, Jaden Daniels likes to run and everything, but it's not like they use him like Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts, where every time they get inside the 5-yard line, they're trying to call a QB run. I mean, look, I'm not going to say it's as good as what David Montgomery has in Detroit with like the Lions offensive line a little bit better. Goff, obviously a bit more of a statue, but again, middle class man's version. I think B-Rob has that in his range of outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, Robinson's just a name that people are going to be tired of. They've tried it several times now, and it hasn't worked. And those are the kind of guys, when nothing has changed on their roster, they can be a value to the next year. And he had bad injury luck last year as well. I know he ended up playing through a lot of it, but he was battling injuries for much of the year. So Brian Robinson was not 100%. And to your point, Ian, on an offense like the Commanders, look at Jaden Daniels. Yes, does he steal some of the carries inside the 5? It happens, but it's not like Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts. There's still going to be plenty available here, and they were mostly giving those carries to Robinson. Eckler wasn't really much of a factor. They might change that up a little bit this year. Debo might steal a couple of those looks as well. But yeah, if I had to look down the list of all these guys that are like the early down backs, we really want them to be on the good offenses, and Robinson does check that box. And when they do, we do get these spike seasons like Ian's talking about, where you get 10 or 12 rushing touchdowns. And if that happens, like, he's suddenly going to be a guy that you're plugging into your running back 2 every week and feeling pretty good about it. So yes, I am with Ian on Brian Robinson Jr. being a guy that could surprise, especially through touchdowns. That's going to be his best path.
Next winner here, winner with an asterisk, guys, because while we're on the air right now, we did have the Miami Dolphins take Ollie Gordon, 179th overall running back out of Oklahoma State. So still an asterisk nonetheless, but Achane, Jaylen Wright, Alexander Madison on the depth chart here. Gordon, when you looked at his draft stock, right? Good on pass ability, good passing down guy, solid blocker, good pass catcher out of the backfield here. So, Ian, any thoughts here on Ollie Gordon going over to the Dolphins, and does it affect Achane?
Again, I've been saying it all show. You're a 6th-round pick. You shouldn't matter. I will say, though, Gordon, if you're, one of the sick people where you're doing the look ahead, 2025 mock drafts, a year before, you would have seen this dude actually, at the tail end of round 1, maybe even round 2, because he had over 2,000 total yards and 22 touchdowns in that 2023 season at Oklahoma State. Unfortunately, just fell off, had some off the field stuff going on as well here in 2024. So again, would like to think that it's still going to be a nice positive for Achane and Jaylen Wright. But again, this having Gordon in there, this 225-pound player who is capable of running between the tackles, maybe a bit more physically than guys like Jaylen Wright and Devon Achane, it's just enough to make me a bit more hesitant in, calling Jaylen Wright and obviously Achane these big-time winners. I'm not worried about this for Achane at all. I think he was always going to get his touches. But Dwayne, does adding Gordon here really, is that going to change the projection much for Jaylen Wright? Because otherwise, I know Wright was someone who, yes, also had day 3 draft capital, but it does matter a little bit. The Dolphins traded their 3rd-round pick from this year to get Wright in the first place in 2024.
Yeah, probably not. But it's definitely worth noting. Ollie Gordon, it's a run scheme that we like. And I will say one of the things with Jaylen Wright, they do scheme him up kind of in a similar way to Achane. They try to get him on these quick power tosses, get him in an alley, let him use his speed. I could see Ollie Gordon be potentially, right, being more of a complement to Achane.
Yeah.
Right. A guy that's not just about the big playability, but hey, could really attack from inside out, get you some of those tough inside yards. And to your point, Ian, he was really thought of as a higher end prospect last year. Now, I just went ahead and plugged in his draft capital. He comes out as a 65 in the supermodel. We are actually now getting down to the range where the hit rates really do start to drop off. So I'm with Ian. Not going to really impact the way I think about Achane. Still going to right now have Jaylen Wright penciled in as the running back 2, but definitely one that we'll want to keep an eye on in training camp around Ollie Gordon. For now, not something I'm probably even going to be drafting in best ball with Ollie Gordon. Maybe a last round dart throw kind of thing. But we could get news in training camp that changes the way we look at that pretty easily, and suddenly we might think Ollie Gordon is in a battle for the running back 2 position.
Again, Ollie Gordon going 179th overall to the Dolphins over here from Oklahoma State. So definitely one to watch for there. Another winner, and they have not added anyone that I see since we've been live here. So we do have to talk about the
Kendall,
Buffalo
real quick.
Bills. Yeah.
Can I ask you guys, I have seen, and I want to hear yours and Ian's thoughts just real quick on Achane, because I've got him projected right now as the running back 5. I've got him scoring, 16.1 fantasy points per game, in a PPR. Last year he scored 17.6. So I feel really good about him. But I have heard a lot of people out there saying that they're really worried this receiving kind of role is just going to go away. It's going to evaporate, and it's all going to go back to the receivers. And I get it. There's some risk there. I took his targets per route run down from what he did last year. But do you guys really think that's a legit thing? Because HN was also pretty good as a rookie, like on his per route numbers as far as what he did as a receiver.
I mean, Dwayne, I think you've kind of said this over the years, and it's one of the smarter things you put out there. So I appreciate that from your man. But he has a lot of outs. All right, we've seen that. His first year, it was just this insane efficiency, ripping off 70-yard touchdowns left and right, and he was able to again still provide RB1 levels. But Raheem Mostert's freaking scoring 20 touchdowns that year, and then last year, okay, doesn't have Raheem doing his thing. HN really until the last month or so of the year when he started to get going a bit more in terms of the big playability. Probably not a coincidence. It was because he was playing through that high ankle sprain during the first part of the year, didn't have Tua out there, but he almost won more so on volume just overall in 2024 in a Dolphins offense that wasn't nearly as good. So God forbid we get the volume from 2024 with the efficiency from 2023. Yeah. I mean, there's an RB1 overall finish in his potential range of outcomes from that standpoint. So, Kendall, I mean, look, with HN, again, RB5, anyone that we're projecting to be a top 5 player to position, like you do have to kind of check yourself a little bit there. But I think what we've seen from HN and the offense as a whole, I mean, if he's not deserving, who is?
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. Like, I understand because I've heard people call in to Sirius and they say, well, I'm just nervous about the Miami Dolphins as a whole. But I think that's what it is. They're nervous about the offense. You look at Tua Tagovailoa, you have Tyreek Hill doing whatever Tyreek Hill is doing. Jalen Waddle didn't live up to expectations, but it feels like Achane is the only one on this team where you look at him and you say, well, there's a consistent fantasy thread. You don't have to worry when Achane's on the field because and we saw it last season, that offense ran through him and Jonnu Smith. Like, there's another guy where you might say to yourself, all right, well, if I'm looking for a tight end and I don't want to get the top 3, top 5 guys, let me just wait and see if Jonnu Smith's still on the board. So I'm with you guys. I think that I'm going to continue drafting HN, and people might just be nervous, Dwayne, based on all the other pieces of this offense, not necessarily HN, but just thinking about Tua's health, Tyreek, and just that they didn't, in the NFL, they didn't live up to the expectations that they had last year, right?
Yeah, and I personally, the Tua thing, is obviously scary with the concussions, but overall, Mike McDaniel, yes, he needs to show us that he's got a counterpunch for his offense, but he's still an offensive mind I choose to believe in, right? If I've got to choose like the top 5 or 6 offensive coordinators that I want to believe in, I think he's still one of them. So I think it's kind of funny how quickly people are jumping ship on the Dolphins because I feel like outside of a Tua injury, they're kind of a lock to be a really good offense. Like, I just don't see them falling off in the way this. And there are some smart people out there. I've even heard Matt Harmon, I was on his show at one point and he talked to me about this kind of theory he had. He was worried about the Dolphins. I just don't share that sentiment.
But imagine if they trade Tyreek Hill. Like, I feel like that is still could be an outcome. That's been the rumors, Ian.
It felt like Tyreek Hill was gone last year anyway. Sorry, Ian, you take it. Like, what did Tyreek do last year?
Well, that was the whole thing. It's like, well, he was injured with the wrist injury. It's like, I checked. He only had 3 drops on the year. Okay. That shouldn't have stopped him from still being able to get open and do his thing over there. So, yeah, I mean, we got off the field stuff going on with Tyreek as well. He's been in trade rumors along there with Jalen Ramsey. So I get it from the circumstance. I don't think McDaniel went into last season saying, oh, man, just, move aside Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. I want to force feed Achane and Jonnu Smith the ball. But when you look at the personnel and the only kind of pass catcher they've added is, an absolute dog and Nick Westbrook-Ikini. But, yeah, come on, we're not expecting him to be taking much away from this. Like, Achane, his ability to win, not just in terms of the screen design game, but legit, like they had him out wide running posts and catching the ball, 15 yards over the middle. So again, Dwayne, we talk a lot about some of these running backs, like, well, okay, he can catch your screens, he can catch your checkdowns, that's fine. Achane actually is one of those dudes where if we're looking up in a couple of years going, oh yeah, pencil him in for another 70 receptions, I think he has the skills to do it.
Yeah, and I will say, I know we need to move to the next topic, but that's the thing that I was kind of leaning into when I've heard some of the issues that people have had where they're like, oh, it was all a scam, this stuff to HN. And while some of it was, I get it, behind the line of scrimmage stuff, you're doing certain things. But to your point, they were actually lining him up in the slot at times. They were using him on these angle routes down the field. It's not like everything was just behind the line of scrimmage. So I feel like HN has actually progressed quite a bit, like as an actual route runner since he was drafted out of Texas A&M. And we know last year that was something he said he worked really hard on. And then we saw them actually use him in that way in the season. So I tend to think that there actually might be some upside still sitting in with HN, to your point, Ian, if he's 100% healthy.
All of us still in on Achane for the Miami Dolphins there. Write that one down. Let's go over to the Bills here. This was one, again, where we were waiting, Ian, to see if they were going to add anyone to this backfield. Because, again, we have to go back to the rumors with James Cook. He has been very vocal about wanting a new deal. He's going into the final year of his deal, making $5.1 million in 2025. He has said that he wants $15 million per year. That puts him in, CMC, JT, Saquon Barkley range, which is a lot of money. And then you hear that, discussions aren't going very well. You have Ray Davis, who had 113 carries last year. Ty Johnson was also in there with 41 carries. So you don't add anyone for the Buffalo Bills, but it's the question of what kind of I think they're going to give him a contract. I don't think it's $15 million, Ian, but I do think for what it's worth, James Cook is going to be a Buffalo Bill in 2025.
It seems like he's going to force that issue. I mean, he did not actually report to the start of their voluntary offseason program. Could he show up on the last day possible when he's ready to go and everything be just fine? Of course. But again, this dude and honestly his brother Dalvin have been very vocal the entire offseason about wanting to get paid. And I get it from James. I mean, he was fantastic last year. Scored, 20 plus touchdowns. Looked like one of the best players on the field in the AFC Championship game. So yeah, man, go get your money. But I'm just not so sure Brandon Beane and the Bills, who have not extended a running back since he has taken over, are necessarily going to want to do that with James Cook, because behind the guy, we had one game last year where James Cook was that late scratch on Monday Night Football. And what Ray Davis do? Had over 150 total yards, looked good catching the ball and obviously running the ball off the middle. Ty Johnson, much more of a third down back, but hey, he does his job well. Actually led all running backs in yards per touch overall last season. So Dwayne, it's one of those things where I think they figure out something with James Cook, or he just shows up and plays out the last year of his contract. And accordingly, yes, James Cook is once again going to be this top 15 running back. But man, Ray Davis, if you want to, I'll go ahead and just start ranking the handcuffs in the world, man, he deserves to be in that top tier, assuming, again, we're not going to have any more running backs added to this picture.
Yeah, I mean, and at this point, like if we had a running back, we're getting pretty late, so we're probably not going to worry that much about it. So looking at James Cook, like I agree with everything you guys said. I think James Cook is overvaluing what he thinks he should be worth, but I do think the Bills will ultimately try to get something figured out, Kendall. I mean, there's a disconnect between the way the Bills see James Cook and how often they want to use him and what James Cook is thinking. And if I'm James Cook, I'm actually going for my contract as well, because really the best thing you had going for you last year was just touchdown variance. I mean, this dude scored a touchdown on 2% of his carries in his first year in the league, 1% in his second year in the league. Last year, 8%, which is that's astronomical, guys. 8% of his carries turned into touchdowns. A big part of that just comes down to random luck variance. So yeah, go try to get paid while you can. And that's not to take away from him. I think people know, like if you've listened to me long enough, like I've been a James Cook stan. I think he's an explosive playmaker. Yeah. He can attack areas down the field. Most receivers can. I think he's a very versatile weapon, but the Bills don't seem to think he's a guy they can load up. And so if they don't view him as a guy that they can give 70% of the snaps to or 65% of the snaps to, I don't see any way they're going to give him the kind of contract that he's demanding. So I think they do ultimately get it figured out. They know they've got a playmaker, but I mean, they could hit a snag. They could hit a snag if James Cooks really thinks that he needs to be paid like one of these backs that can play all the downs, Kendall. So really interested to see how it plays out. But ultimately, both these guys, yes, are winners so far in the draft. And like Ian said, maybe the biggest takeaway right now is we should be drafting Ray Davis and best ball, knowing that there is this potential for a contract issue here because he did look really good last season in that one game.
Man, crazy how the times change. Ian Rappaport did report just a couple weeks ago that things aren't great between the two, James Cook and the organization, but that he still does plan to play for them in 2025. So that we've got a couple months before the season even starts. Same with training camp. So we'll see what happens there. Let's go on to the losers for fantasy football. Some of the guys that did not walk away clean. One of them being, and I know this is one of your guys here, Ian, Naji Harris, unfortunately, was not someone that got away, but it was fun. It was fun while it lasted. We already said that. You got Amari and Hampton going to the Chargers with the 22nd pick overall. You said last night or 2 nights ago that maybe this is a cheap version of David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, but nonetheless, this does hurt Naji Harris.
Oh, absolutely. Because I remember Dwain and I speaking about a month ago, and we were asking, hey, what if we get through this draft and the Chargers don't add any meaningful competition? And really at that point, what would be the difference between Naji Harris and guys like Joe Mixon and Kyron Williams, who I know the world just thinks Naji Harris is the worst running back to ever, walk this planet. But when you look at the numbers between him and Mixon and Kyron, they're all not very good, but they can all handle volume. And when you're doing that in good offenses like the Chargers, the Texans, and the Rams, you can fall into the end zone double-digit times and we'll get our fantasy points. So I just feel like things like vision that we can't really quantify that well, we end up kind of saying you either have it or you don't. So guys like Naji and DeAndre Swift maybe a bit unfairly get, that held against them more than other running backs. So all that to say, yeah, how could Naji not be one of the bigger losers? Because before Dwain, I think he probably would have had a serious case as a top 5, top 6 running back just in terms of total touches. But now with Hampton there, cut it in freaking half. Now it's going to be tough to view him really as anything more than this, touchdown dependent RB3.
Yeah, and I think drafters were actually doing a good job of splitting the difference, realizing that we could see the Chargers in round 1 or 2 add a running back, knowing you had Harbaugh sitting there and Greg Roman and how weak the depth chart was. Like people were taking him as that mid-range running back 2 for Naji. Now he's going to fall to mid-range running back 3 or low-end running back 3. I've actually got Omari and Hampton projected right now for 50% of the rushing attempts over the course of the year. I think Naji might start off game 1 as the starter. We'll see what's happening in training camp. But I'm still giving 40% to Naji. So it's kind of like that scenario that Ian laid out. It's this 1A, 1B scenario more so than a clear 1 versus a 2. But I do think as the season progresses, because of the big playability that Hampton has, that Naji hasn't necessarily demonstrated consistently over his career, was pretty good at it last year, actually a career year for him for explosive rush rate, carries of 10 plus yards or more. But if you look at his career, I think we're going to see that Hampton's going to be the guy that's just got that better chance to give him the long ball, here and there. So I think Hampton does end up becoming the lead back by like week 6 or 7. Maybe it's out of the gate, but I don't think Naji completely disappears in this first year. So I'm still giving him 40% of the work. And I think that Naji probably starts off as the guy leading the way on passing downs. Hampton can play passing downs. He's pretty good in pass pro. He's not a guy you're going to mistake for being a player like Achane that you might want to build part of your passing game around, but he's good enough in that department. But Naji's been really good in pass pro. And Naji, if you go back to his rookie season, Naji was really good as a receiver out of the backfield. Not a guy attacking downfield, but yeah, but soft hands, can handle the check down stuff, which really right now with the way the Chargers run their offense, that's all they're looking for. And so I do think Naji probably gets more of that passing down work early in the year. Again, though, I think Hampton's the guy by the time you're trying to win your fantasy championship, Kendall, that you want to have on your roster. Just looking at the projections, and again, I'll be playing with these as we hear more from the press conferences and stuff like that. But first pass, Omari and Hampton and a PPR comes out running back 28, and it's got Naji running back 36.
Well, and that feels like why you talked about it a couple of days ago, Dwain, where you said long-term, like when we talked, it's different from redraft to dynasty, but you said long-term dynasty this season. This is a great move for him. You said 80% of his comps went on to post top 12, Dwain, running back finishes within their first 3 years, right?
Yeah, I think Hampton could be a top 6 running back by next year. Imagine just the only scenario that has to play out is this. Naji's 1-year contract is over. Their Chargers don't bring him back. Immediately, what do we think about Omari and Hampton and the Chargers offense behind a good offensive line with Justin Herbert? I mean, he's going to be a guy that's probably knocking on the door top 7 or 8, and it won't take long. Like best ball drafters, well, you know how rabid they are. It'll happen really fast. Like his stock's going to shoot through the roof.
Definitely. All right. Moving on to the Steelers here. We've got another loser. We thought, I don't know, Ian, that maybe this was going to be the Jaylen Warren year. Maybe we didn't think that. We kind of knew in the back of our minds that they were going to add someone to this backfield. But for Jaylen Warren, the addition here is Caleb Johnson, pick 83 overall. What do you see here? Is there hope for Jaylen Warren in this situation, or do you think we just have to turn now to Caleb Johnson for 2025?
It was wishful thinking to believe the Steelers were going to go through the first 3 rounds and not take another running back. But I'm a wishful person, guys. Okay. And I really like Jaylen Warren. I wanted that to happen. So it was unfortunate, again, to see this play out this way. But man, I feel like honestly what Dwain just kind of described as, again, the system that we're going to see in Los Angeles with Hampton being RB28, Naji RB36, it's probably going to be tough to get off of that similar range for what we're looking at with Caleb Johnson and Jaylen Warren. And if I had this guess, which guy is going to have the best chance of really breaking out, I'd probably have to lean Caleb. I mean, we saw Naji for 4 years in Pittsburgh, just not give them anything in the way of this high-end efficiency. Meanwhile, what more could you ask for from Warren? Just continuously topping the league's charts as a rusher, as a receiver. He's a good pass blocker as well. As we talked about, he's not necessarily this pint-sized scat back. I mean, he can run between the tackles as well, and that still wasn't enough to stop them from taking Caleb Johnson, who just seems like such a great scheme fit in Arthur Smith's outside zone, run scheme to, again, prevent them from doing that. So it hurts. And honestly, again, just the fact that Caleb did manage to get that day 2 draft capital, we found himself in such a great scheme. I would go Caleb over Jaylen Warren this year. Now, like Naji, like Hampton, I think both these guys have the 3-down skill sets, more so Warren catching the football, where God forbid Caleb does miss a little bit of time, Warren could still shoot up the ranks. So certainly flex with benefits. I think he should be ranked ahead of the more clear-cut backups, guys like Tyler Algier, Blake Corum, Trey Benson, and that group of guys and everything. But man, Dwayne, I mean, if we were sitting here and the Steelers' first running back was a round 6 guy, I'd be screaming about Jaylen Warren, potentially working his way into that top 15, top 20. Now it seems like it's going to be tough to even get him in the top 30.
Yeah, I like Jaylen Warren's chances better than Naji's personally, just because I think Jaylen Warren, I mean, it's one of those deals where if we get it right, we know how good he is and he can do everything, right? And he can be this explosive playmaker. So it's one of these deals where we're not for sure if we're going to be right or wrong on how we're going to split these backfields up. But if it did manage to break Jaylen Warren's way still, like we just know how much upside is really there. And the deal with Caleb Johnson is he's a much lesser prospect than Omari and Hampton. So Jaylen Warren, I think, I think he still has a puncher's chance of actually beating Caleb Johnson out for the lead role here. I'm not guaranteeing it's going to happen, and Thor would scream at me if he was on this show with me because he absolutely loves Caleb Johnson. But the Supermodel called out Caleb Johnson as being one of these players that, based on where mock draft data was, he was really being overrated. He ends up falling down the board a little bit, and so he's closer to being even now. It's not a huge deal. The model doesn't see him as being this drastically overrated player. I am with you guys in my first pass of the projections. I gave 52% of the carries to Caleb Johnson, only 35 to Jaylen Warren. So we're really on the same page, but I gave Jaylen Warren all the pass down work. And so he's ultimately right now still projecting out slightly ahead of Caleb Johnson in the projections in a PPR format. They get way closer when you go to half PPR. When you go to standard, then Caleb Johnson moves ahead. So I've got Caleb Johnson right now getting most of the early down work on first and second downs, with Jaylen Warren spelling him some, but getting those pass down reps. I will say this, though, something we definitely will be keeping an eye on in training camp. This will be a big battle we want to watch, because I do think there is a chance. I think there's a better chance that Jaylen Warren beats out Caleb Johnson for the starting role to start the year here. Well, not to start the year, but for the course of the year, over Naji Harris versus Omari and Hampton. I just think Omari and Hampton's quite a bit better than Caleb Johnson.
But Dwayne, just real quick, where does Cordero Patterson fit into the Steelers' backfield equation?
He's in there. Well, it is Arthur Smith and Kenneth Gainwell. I gave all of them. That's the thing. I could not eliminate any of them, because if you look at the history of Arthur Smith, even when he had freaking Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, he still found a way to give away touches to other backs. One of them was Cordero Patterson at that time. So I've actually got work going to Kenneth Gainwell and a little bit of work going to Cordero Patterson too. And when I was doing the projections, not to be mean to either one of those guys, but it was kind of annoying that I couldn't just give like that extra 10% to the other top 2 guys, but I couldn't, just because Arthur Smith truly is one of these guys. I mean, he rotates players besides his offensive linemen and his quarterbacks. Like, he rotates everything. Like, all those players are going to rotate more than what you think. So, Cordero Patterson and Kenneth Gainwell still getting touches, Ian.
Appreciate you.
Ian, overall, though, because I know we're talking about fantasy losers here potentially, but is it just a huge loss for the Steelers that now it looks like they're just going to wait on the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes and hope it works out? Or if Aaron Rodgers does sign to this team, this is taking it overall to like the DK Metcalfs of the world, George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth. Like, how do you evaluate them?
I mean, I would say they did take Will Howard in round 6, but I don't think we're expecting him to actually factor into it's round 6. I don't think he's going to factor into the, starting QB conversation. The fact that they did, just completely bypass Shidor Sanders and really try to do anything else, it does tell me that Aaron Rodgers seemingly will be wearing, black and yellow this season. And I'll say this, I mean, just if we had to project the offense overall for 2025 with Aaron Rodgers versus a Shidor Sanders versus a Tyler Show or one of these guys, I do think Rodgers still has enough enough in the tank to maybe get them around a league average offense. Second half of the Jets season, there were stretches where at least we saw him, again, not exactly resembling the MVP form, but, at least being someone that can move the ball. So overall, with Pittsburgh, again, don't exactly think they're going to be knocking on the doors a top 10 scoring offense, but they finish around, 17th, 18th or something. I think that's fair.
All right, moving on to the other losers here from today. We're looking at Ramondre Stevenson, Dwain, Antonio Gibson for the New England Patriots. They did end up taking TreVeyon Henderson, 38th overall. And this is a running back room where you thought maybe they could get away with it. But now that you add TreVeyon Henderson, Dwain, it feels like he's going to be the one that we keep our eyes on.
Yeah, I mean, Ramondre Stevenson, despite getting the contract last year, it's like he had so many little things go against him. Like last year, it was, we're going to add Antonio Gibson and give him passing down work, when really Mondre had been good as a passing down back in those previous 2 years. And it's part of what really made us comfortable with him, in fantasy. And so they've already taken away part of the passing down roles. Now they add this other back that potentially you're going to use in a satellite kind of role at times as well, and is a more explosive playmaker. So I think he's going to lose potentially even more of the passing down work, and now he's going to lose some of the early down work. So this is really bad for Ramondre Stevenson. Plus, we're on an offense where we're just not sure how good it's going to be. Yeah, we think the arrow is pointed in the right direction, but it's not like it's this loaded offense, and we don't have a guarantee that Drake May is suddenly going to take this huge step in year two. Yes, we're betting on it, but if we're talking about a range of outcomes, like, it's just not a guarantee, Kendall. So I went back and actually reworked the projections a little bit after our show, after having that good conversation with you and Ian, and I've got it a little tighter right now. And also just re-looking at TreVeyon Henderson's talent profile and where they decided to take him in the draft, I've got 47% of the carries going to Mondre, but in an offense like this, honestly, to get excited about a player like him, you need 60%. And I've got 42% of the carries now going to TreVeyon Henderson. I think it's going to be closer to a 1AB, and they see them as really being complementary to one another than what I was originally thinking when I was handling the projections. So in my opinion, I think this almost makes Ramondre Stevenson undraftable unless he really starts to fall down the draft board, because what are we getting? We're not getting an early down back that's potentially in an elite offense that's going to score 12 touchdowns. Like, that's going to be a hard case to sell to anybody. He's not going to get the passing down work like he used to. So he's almost like he's stuck in this no man's land. And it's not that we hate Ramondre Stevenson. I think he could be productive on the right offense. But right now in New England, with them adding TreVeyon Henderson, this is a massive blow to Ramondre Stevenson. And I just don't see myself drafting him much at all this year. And his best path, honestly, to probably relevance is if something happened to TreVeyon Henderson.
Yeah, Dwain, but do you remember in 2022 when I was so out on Ramondre because all these things had to go wrong? Guys had to get hurt. Guys needed to not make an impact. I think we had James White retire, and just every single little thing happened. And accordingly, Ramondre ended up getting that 3-down role. So I don't want to say I'm never going to draft the guy, but it does seem like unlike some of these backfields we talked about, the Chargers, the Steelers, or maybe we are only one injury away from the RB2 essentially becoming this top 15 fantasy guy. I don't think that's the case in New England. I think Dwain's spot on in terms of Mondre probably needs both Henderson and probably Gibson to leave the picture in order for him to become this, bell cow that we actually would be forcing the lineups of all shapes and sizes. Because again, this remains one of the worst offensive environments in the NFL. Yes, I think they're better from their status of that very same thing last season. That's good. We're moving in the right direction. But again, if we just had to sit here today and rank all 32 offensive environments, I'd be hard pressed to believe the Patriots still aren't going to be in the bottom 5. So make some good moves. Hopefully their rookies grow up fast and do some good things. But yeah, I mean, Ramondre is someone I'm not going to be excited about. And accordingly, TreVeyon, pretty tough to get excited about as well. I mean, Kendall, look, it was fun with Josh McDaniels just force feeding Josh Jacobs the ball in, 2022. He made so many big plays. That was awesome. But man, trying to figure out these Patriots running backs in the 2010s was a nightmare.
Yeah, it's just one where whichever one I picked, I went on and I said, well, you guys actually probably shouldn't start this guy because they're probably going to do poorly because I picked him. That's just how it went. It was like a roulette wheel where you just say, all right, well, I'm just trying to figure it out one day at a time here. So I'm with both of you guys. I think it's just one of those things where you just have to wait and see what happens here. But TreVeyon Henderson is the obvious one where when you look at this team, you look at where they're trying to go. Like Dwain said, hopefully the arrow is pointing in the right direction. I hope it is. I just don't think it's going to be this quick change that people people are expecting, right, with this team. You say Vrabel's in here, everything's going to go great according to plan. I think you guys have Drake May QB 15 right now in your fantasy ranks, which seems pretty fair for an offense that, did give him some weapons in the offseason. But it just feels like people are expecting it to be a quick turnaround. And I don't necessarily believe Ian that it's going to be one season and we're going to have these Patriots as contenders.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, look at the Bears offense compared to the Patriots right now. I mean, we're probably picking the Bears at every position other than running back. So, hey, they got that going for them in New England. And again, Mike Vrabel's there, and, I think things are moving in the right direction, but just going to be tough for me to go out of my way, for Mondre or Travion.
Yes. Go to the Browns. Are we going to go out of our way, Dwain, for these Browns running backs here? Because unfortunately for Jerome Ford, he did get a little bit of company here. They took Quinshon Judkins, and this was one where, again, we expected this, right, Dwain? We had, like I said, we had Zach Jackson come on, the Athletics beat writer for the Cleveland Browns, and he said, hey, listen, someone's going to come into this backfield. Nick Chubb is seemingly, not going to be on this team, or whatever's going to happen with Nick Chubb. He's not going to be there. So Quinshon Judkins, what do you see from him, and what are your expectations for him in fantasy?
I mean, look, it's not a great environment as far as what we think about the offense. I mean, we can look back to 2 years ago when Joe Flacco did, kind of have a crazy offense going at the end of that season. And Jameis did the same thing last year. So it's a never say never kind of thing. But it's like what Ian was saying, overall, if we were to rank the Browns offense right now, it's going to be hard to say that they're anything better than bottom 7 or 8 in the league. Having said all that, I do think Quinshon Judkins is going to mostly take this backfield over right away. Now, they did also add Dylan Sampson today, and he's a guy that Lance Zierlein graded really highly. Talked about a guy that's very patient, got really good vision, didn't necessarily have the production in college, but has the traits that NFL teams like. So Pierre Strong Jr., if anybody was holding on hope for that, rest in peace. That could also be a bad sign for Jerome Ford. If Dylan Sampson now starts challenging Jerome Ford for that running back 2 role. But man, Quinshon Judkins, they spent nice capital on him. I do think he's going to lead this backfield, especially on early downs. I could see the passing down still going to a Jerome Ford. Maybe even Sampson gets some of those carries. So I think Quinshon Judkins is one of these guys that I will be interested in drafting, Kendall, depending on how it all shakes out. But I'm not going to sit here and prioritize him and say that we kind of have to go back to the Brian Robinson Jr. example. While I think Quinshon Judkins is a better prospect than Robinson was, the best path for Quinshon is to score 10 or 12 touchdowns. That's how he blows out his expectations, because I do think they're going to use one of these other guys on passing downs. And so we would really need the Browns offense to surprise us. I think there's a path to it. I think it's a never say never kind of scenario, but it's a tough one to really have to bet on. So again, I like Quinshon. He's a guy that I'm going to be willing to draft, but I'm not going to prioritize him if he gets steamed because, too many questions about the offense overall.
And I do wonder with that B-Rob example. I mean, Quinshon probably should not, I'm assuming projection-wise, Brian Robinson should probably be projected for more fantasy points, because even if you do believe Quinshon is a better talent, which I do for sure, dude is a vicious runner, and that's great, but yards per carry just tends to not mean quite as much in fantasy land as you might think it would. So say Quinshon's going to average 0.3 extra yards per carry than Robinson, which I don't even think is necessarily a safe assumption. It's not going to make up for the touchdown difference that Robinson is going to have as part of that Commanders, again, high-flying Jaden Daniels-led group. So that said, I do think the reality that, again, we are just such a rookie-obsessed fantasy football community. We're going to see Judkins perhaps ranked a bit higher than he should. Meanwhile, you do have a, more boring veteran like Brian Robinson, who in reality is in the better position. So Judkins, again, long-term, hopefully he does take over this whole backfield, but that Sampson pick, man, that's a dude that a lot of smartphone guys actually has a top 5 running back in their own right. And I don't necessarily think that Sampson's going to challenge. I mean, look, they drafted Judkins 35th overall. Okay, I think it's safe to say he's their RB1, but picking Sampson there does, signify to me that there's probably a better chance than we're maybe expecting, as it's going to remain a committee of sorts. I mean, that's what we really saw, Dwain, for most of the entire Kevin Stefanski tenure. Yes, they did find a way to, get Nick Chubb north of 300 touches when he was healthy and ready to go. But Kareem Hunt's always been involved. And even when these last 2 years Chubb was injured, maybe it's an indictment on Jerome Ford just not quite being that 3-down talent. But whether it's Pierre Strong Jr. or, a washed version of Deontay Foreman, Stefanski has regularly kept, multiple guys involved here in Cleveland. And it makes me concerned, honestly, in a similar aspect as what we were just talking about with the Patriots, where, okay, even if Jerome Ford does get injured, I'm not so sure that Judkins automatically becomes this, 80% plus workhorse.
Yeah, I think it's a question. Like, I don't think there's any way for us to really say for sure. Like Sampson, The one thing is, like, can he hold up in pass pro? He's pretty small. So maybe Judkins still gets like the long down and distance work, but maybe Sampson takes over the 2-minute offense. It's a situation like whatever way it played out wouldn't surprise me. I do think that there is a narrow path to Judkins being an every down back. I think that it could happen. I think some people kind of overrate, what he was as a pass catcher. I mean, overrate how bad he was as a pass catcher. I think he is a player that, has the frame and everything that, like, with better coaching could probably stay on the field. Is he going to be a centerpiece to a passing game? No. But like, if he learns how to pass block, he can probably stay on the field. Right. And so I think it'll come down to ultimately being that. I have Quinshon projected for slightly more. It's really close, more than Brian Robinson Jr., but I've got him at 55% of the carries. I've got Robinson at 45 because I'm also giving Debo some of those carries. So now I haven't added Sampson to the mix here and given him any of those carries. So Quinshon could come down a little bit. I probably in a vacuum and still going to bet on the young talent and Judkins over B-Rob, like if I had to do it in one draft. But I will say Ian has a really good point, and I can't necessarily argue against it. I think they have really similar ranges of outcomes. Like if Brian Robinson were to stay healthy all year, and the Washington Commanders are the offense we think they're going to be, Quinshon's healthy all year, and the Browns are the offense we think they're going to be. Even if Quinshon's way better than Brian Robinson Jr., it will be hard for him to outscore him. So I lean slightly to Quinshon, but I think that it's a good argument for me.
All right, those were our fantasy football winners and losers from the last couple of days. Any closing thoughts here, Ian, that you want to get off your chest before you go celebrate your birthday?
Football's awesome. Football's awesome. I love it.
Football's awesome. Dwayne,
love
anything else? You good?
No, like, hey, we'll continue updating the rookie supermodel. I'll have my rookie rankings piece I'm writing tomorrow. It'll go up on the site. So yeah, everybody check out fantasylife.com. That would be my closing comments, Kendall.
I love it. I love it. In honor of draft day, Ian, we would all come to your birthday party, so you don't have to worry about that. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us here today. Happy early birthday to Ian Hartitz. And again, fantasielife.com. That's where you go and subscribe to our newsletter. Check out all of our articles 100% free, but use that promo code early25, gets you 25% off any Fantasy Life Plus subscription for the next year. That code ends on April 27th, so make sure you use that ASAP, early25 for 25% off. Thanks everyone for hanging out with us these last couple of days. We'll see you next time.